Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hopefully, we still have some energy. They put me at the end of the day, which is always the kind of hardest one to do to get people's energy up. But I think we got a fun topic today, so I'm glad you decided to stay with us. All right, AI for FinOps, from hype to helpful. I kind of put together this talk because I feel like a lot of the conversation around AI and FinOps is sort of top-down. So you are sharing concepts, things are going to change, this is going to be important for everybody to use, and all of these things. Everybody saw the keynote today and kind of how that went. And it's a different thing to then get to your desk Monday morning and be like, okay, what do I do? So that's really what I tried to put together in this talk, and hopefully I'll give you some things that you can actually use once you get back to work. So going over the agenda, we're going to kick things off with who I am and why you should care. And then we're going to jump into designing your AI tool chest. And I do want to give you a heads up. This is going to definitely get way more complex as we go. They wanted me to put together like a 200 level. I think it might have been 300 level by the end. So just know that there are a few jarring jumps in complexity to look forward to. But the beginning will be nice. We're going to get into building your AI home base, which is this concept that I kind of put together that's been super useful to me. We're going to be talking about kind of how I work, and maybe you can copy what you like and take concepts that you also like. And then we're going to dig into some real use cases with some real prompts and look at some ways to actually talk to your AI and improve the way that you are asking your AI or your agent to do things. And then a few tips for getting to work, what you're going to do Monday morning. And then we will have some time for some Q&A afterwards, so if you have any questions. All right, who am I? I'm Dan. I've been in the FinOps space for a while at a bunch of different companies. You can read it yourself. I don't need to walk you through that. The thing of note is that after Vantage, but before Squarespace, it was in that window that I took about a year off where I was kind of freelancing, working on my own projects. And that was the window in which ChatGPT came out. And so I sort of had a lot of time to really play with these tools, and I was always really interested in it. So I really got up and running and building SaaS applications and vibe coding and using it as a tool. And so I really came to appreciate the things that it could do, and I was following the news a lot. And I was super excited for when I got back into a Cloud FinOps Lead role at Squarespace, being like, okay, I can take all these skills that I've learned, kind of doing this on my own on personal projects, and apply it to work. And I very quickly learned that it's not quite that easy. There's a lot of additional information and context and constraints when you're using this for your work. And so I kind of came from it from a place of working on personal projects and then being able to apply certain concepts to work. And that's sort of what I'm going to share with you in the presentation today. So this is the theme of this FinOps X, right? This is what you hear from everybody. Everybody is going to need to use AI. People might not get promotions if they're not using AI, this sort of thing. And it's one thing to hear that and believe it and understand it even, but there's a difference between that and knowing what to do Monday morning, like I said, and that's what we're going to dig into. Cool, so you have to remember that integrating AI into your FinOps practice is an evolution. No one is going to go from zero to having a perfect practice immediately. You're going to have some sort of journey. It's going to look like this: curiosity. Let me try asking AI to write this SQL. And you're going to learn that it's a little bit different than asking it to write you a poem, right? Or asking it to tell you a bedtime story. Asking it to write this is just your first time. You're like, oh, this doesn't work. OK, great. And that's going to lead you to the valley of despair, the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? You're going to be like, OK, this can't really do everything that I want. I'm kind of disenfranchised. Maybe it'll get better. And then that gets into calibration, and that's kind of what we're looking at today. So this is learning how to change the way that you interact with AI in order to get the interesting outputs that you want. And then, of course, what we all want to get to is leverage, being able to use the tool to do more work, better work, faster, maybe do less work for yourself and more for your agent. Whatever your leverage is, that's kind of where we want to get to go. All right, a brief touching on your AI tool chest. So this is an example of a bunch of different tools. I'm not going to name all of these. You might have some of them look familiar. There are different categories, like sometimes you interact with AI in apps, sometimes it's via the terminal. You can take notes in a variety of different things. I put this on here just to illustrate that a lot of the concepts that I'm talking about can be done in a lot of different tools. So I'm kind of trying to approach this from the bottom up by sharing kind of how I work. And I primarily like to work in Claude Code and the terminal, so that's what a lot of these things are later in the presentation. But you should take those concepts and work from the bottom up to kind of like figure out how to do it in yours, rather than the top down being like concepts, okay, wait, how do I do this? So there are a lot of different ways to do the things that I'm talking about here, and I encourage you to use the tools that you have, you're familiar with, and that are company approved. Specifically company approved, because I do want to touch on shadow AI. If you haven't heard this term, this is basically the term for AI services that are not company approved, that people are still using. So like using your personal ChatGPT account for work stuff. This is not the best, and I would highly encourage people not to do this. It's easier than ever, because people can just open up a website and interact with an agent and give sensitive company information. But make sure that you're using company-approved stuff. And one of the things I do want to say is now that we're in this moment where companies are investing heavily in AI, it's easier than ever, if you have a use case for using a certain tool, to make the business case to your company. So I highly encourage you, use the tool that you have to draft a business case to use the tool that you want. And there might be a good chance, probably better than you think, of being able to get that. So I do want to touch on that, but please do not use shadow AI. It's not good for anybody. All right, while we're on the topic of AI risks, and this is the last I'm going to touch on this, I just want to share a way to think about AI. So AI, at the end of the day, kind of what it really is it's another layer of abstraction, right? And the concept of abstraction is going to be familiar to people in technology. It's kind of how technology moves forward. For example, computers are bits and bytes. You have assembly language, that's kind of the lowest level of abstraction. And then something like the language C comes along. And the C is an abstraction layer on top of that that enables you to do more, quicker, better. And it's written by a human. If you are motivated enough, you can look at C and how it abstracts down to the layers. And Python's another one kind of on top of that. And technology advances because of abstraction layers. And at the end of the day, AI is just another layer of abstraction. It's kind of the ultimate layer of abstraction because it can do all the things underneath. But as you can see from here, the thing about AI is we have no idea how it works. And I'm not just saying that, like, the researchers, you can look at the numbers, you can look inside it, and we don't really know how it comes up with the answers. And so this is the very first time ever that we have an abstraction layer that involves trust. And that is just not kind of how you really want to operate. And this is why it's so important that anytime you're using any AI tool, you're double checking, you're not just trusting the output. You need to treat it like something that you can't fully trust in the same way you can trust any of the other abstraction layers that we've had in the past. All right, with that, we're going to jump into your AI home base, where we're going to step up a little bit in complexity. So you should be matching the tool to the ask. And I encourage you, take a screenshot of this. In the top corner there is a GitHub repo where I kind of have some supplementary information about the presentation. There's like an AI home base that you can look at there. So if you're going to take a picture, this is a good one. Match the tool to the ask. So if you just have a quick one-off question, that's great. You can go to ChatGPT, you can go to Claude, just ask your question. If you're working in a code base, you most likely want to have a code-based IDE or an AI native IDE like Cursor, Kiro, Windsurf, all of those. What we're going to be doing is using AI kind of in the same way you would in a code base, but with your knowledge base, because you're going to be providing it the context for knowledge workers. So when you have complex work, when you want a system that kind of learns and evolves and grows as you use it, you can turn to the AI home base. So what is the AI home base? The AI home base is a directory. You can just go into Finder and do File, New Folder, or in the terminal, you can do Make Directory, AI Home. If you want, you can even make it persistent. I like to do this. There's a terminal tmux command that kind of makes it a persistent session. And then from there, you can launch your agent. I launch Claude. And what we're going to be doing is in this AI home base, you can add MCP servers. These are going to connect to outside services to be able to do certain tasks. There's going to be certain skills that you can build for any repeatable work that you're going to be doing. And there's going to be memory. This is the most powerful thing because it can learn and evolve and grow as you do it. So on the topic of memory, first this. The anatomy of a home base, diving in a little bit more, some things you might want to add. These are some ideas for folders. Reference, you can have documentation in there. You can have contracts in there. You can even link some repos, although don't clone them because having it cloned in there might be a little bit more complex. If you're on the more technical side of your FinOps practice and you have some scripts or any sort of thing that you've built so far, just yourself written, that would be great just to throw in there. And then skills, this is a folder that's going to be largely managed by the AI agent. And this is going to be learning and growing as you use it. So once you throw in the initial context, you can run this command with Claude Code called init. And init is going to create a claude.md file. And this is going to tell the agent how to browse all of the files that you have in there. So basically what we're doing is we're treating your knowledge base and the context that you have for doing your job as if it was a code base. And you're telling Claude, this is the information that you need to be able to do the things that I ask of you, and here's where to find it. And again, you can plug in even things like your work calendar, Obsidian Vault, which I'm going to talk on in a little bit. So if you have a note-taking system, you can throw this all in there, and it becomes context for your AI to do the work that you want it to do. I'm going to touch on Obsidian just because I personally really like Obsidian. Basically, it's an app that you take notes in based on basically markdown files, and that's it. So it'll be really easy to use at your company because you're not actually sending your files anywhere else. You own it yourself. This is a picture of my actual vault. For me, if you go to meetings and take notes and do that, I've been doing that as part of just my work practice for a long time. And it kind of becomes a superpower for your agent because you can give it that context. It can browse your Obsidian Vault. It can make notes for you. It can do all those sorts of things. So having a note-taking practice, now that we have AI, is just getting more and more powerful. All right, so you've gone in. You've set this all up. I just want to share a few workflows that you can steal Monday morning when you go in. For example, a pre-morning brief. Let's say you have your calendar connected. You have a note base that has your meeting notes and things like that. You can tell it to send you an email in the morning with your schedule for the day and any notes that you might need to prepare for those meetings that you have. When you have a task that you're doing in the AI home base that you know you're going to be doing again, like looking up an anomaly or preparing a report, you can make it into a skill. And this is something where you literally tell the agent, let's make this into a skill. You might do some back and forth in terms of like what you want that to be. And basically what you're doing is you're drafting instructions for how to do a certain task in the same way again in the future. And then in the future, all you need to do is invoke that skill, and it'll do all of the things that you have said in the past. So this is super powerful. If you scan that other page to the GitHub repo, I actually just recently published a post on my website that kind of dives into the skills and the AI home base in more detail if you like reading rather than just listening in a presentation. Another use case is audit old scripts. If you have any of those old scripts from doing your FinOps job in the past that you've thrown in there, you could just tell the agent, take a look at these. How would you improve them? What's missing? Things like that to kind of self-improve your system and your setup, and then that's going to be in your home base, and you can reuse that again in the future. OK, now we're going to get into some more complexity with looking at some real prompts and how to improve prompts. So let's dive into this. So what is the anatomy of a good prompt? It sort of has three kind of components to it. One, when you're giving a prompt, it needs to have context. It needs to have the information available to it to be able to answer your question correctly. Because LLMs are trained on a large amount of data, but it's not going to have the data that is specific to your company. So you need to make sure that that is provided to your agent. The next thing is constraints, which is basically the clear ask of what you want it to do. You need to do the work ahead of time to figure out what you want from the agent, rather than just giving it an open-ended question. So you need to be clear about what you want and the constraints that it's working within. And then this is something that a lot of people miss that I think is super powerful, and this is self-critique. This is asking the agent, how would you improve this? What is missing from this? And these sort of like iterative questions so that you can improve the prompt that you're doing as you're going. And actually, the FinOps Foundation just recently published a fantastic white paper that kind of goes over the prompt best practices, and highly recommend that as kind of like a way to go deeper, to do a deeper dive into prompts specifically. All right, let's take a use case number 1, reporting and analytics. The naive prompt, something that you might do at the beginning, is kind of like, write me a BigQuery SQL query that shows GKE costs broken down by namespace. This might seem like a good thing to do, but if you just ask your agent this, it is not going to give you anything that's actually usable. It's going to hallucinate columns, you're going to get wrong labels, all those sorts of things. And so looking at the 3 contexts, or 3 things we're going to look at, the context, make sure it has information related to the table schema. One of the little tricks that I use, if you're in GCP, this is super fantastic. In their billing console, if you go into their billing console and you have a view that you particularly like, they have a generate query button. If you click that, it'll give you specifically the query to get that same view in your detailed billing data. And you could take that query and just provide it to the agent and tell it what you want to modify. And so it has the context because it knows exactly how to do a correct query, and then you can just ask it to change it, and it'll give you a query that actually works. Constraints. I want net cost minus credits for the current month broken down by X, Y, and Z. You're being very clear about what you want it to do. And then self-critique. Show the query. List any assumptions you made about the schema that I should double check before running it. So you're asking specifically for assumptions and any ways that you can actually improve it. OK, that is the most simple example that we have here. And you're going to see how this context constraint self-critique can kind of get more complex, and it's more of kind of like a loose thing. So this is an example of stakeholder communication. Let's say you had a big cost spike this week, and you want to investigate what it is and put together a report. So you're providing the context. You're giving it all the information about what the anomaly was. In this case, the constraints, you want to give it to 2 audiences. And you can actually use AI to help draft it for those specific audiences. In this case, we have a Slack message for data engineering. It kind of talks about what you want that tone to be. And then the other one is for senior leadership, the CFO. So you're asking the agent to come up with drafts for each of those. And again, first drafts, always double check, always kind of edit it. And then the self-critique. You can say for each version, and with a follow-up question, this audience is likely to ask. So you're having the agent do kind of their work for you and anticipating what the questions are going to be, so that when you go and you do this communication, when you do the anomaly investigation, you get the answer, you're going to have a bulletproof message to be able to communicate internally about what happened and be able to answer a lot of their questions before they actually have it. All right, the next example that I'm kind of going to dive into is policy drafting. You want to put together a GCP resource tagging policy. This is just an example of iterating and using it for the self-critique. So we're giving it the context, we're giving it the ask, and what we're doing is, in a second stage, after we've given it that, we're doing the self-critique. So we're getting the V1 draft, and then we're asking the agent to self-critique that draft. And you can do this as many times as you want. The more you do it, you might get better. There is kind of limiting returns on this. But it is super powerful to be able to iterate with the AI and ask the AI what is missing. And then have conversation with the people, add that to the conversation, and keep iterating on it until you have something that is really bulletproof. Because if you just say, draft a resource tagging policy, it's going to be generic, it's going to be corporate speak, it's just not going to be something that you can actually use internally. But this is how you get to something that you can use internally. And if you're doing this in the AI home base, and you have examples of other policies proofs or other documents or templates from other stuff like that, you're really going to be able to do something that is specific to your company if you iterate enough and you provide it the right context. And then lastly, this is going to be the most complex one. I'm introducing something called lenses. So you're giving it the context. You're giving it the ask what you want. One of your internal teams has put together a design doc for a new analytics platform. They have some cost implications in there because the engineer did that. But you really want to do a deep dive as the FinOps person and kind of explore costs, get the questions all answered, that sort of thing. And so what we're doing is we're introducing 6 lenses, right? So this is going to be just, you can make these up for whatever kind of task you have. This is specifically to the analytics platform. But your lenses can be separate. You can ask AI what lenses. But for this one, you're giving it like capacity assumptions, data movement, storage strategy, scaling and failure. And then the powerful thing is, for each of these, give me the implication, security, give me a question, give me a quote. You're kind of saying that like you're introducing this concept of lenses, and then for each, do X, Y, and Z. I have a full kind of written out prompt. It was a lot of text actually put on a slide in that GitHub repo, along with all the other prompts, kind of like the full ones that you can look at if you want to dig into it later. But this is really powerful where you can kind of split things up by category and then ask questions of each of those categories to really dig in deeply and get really valuable, important information that is unique to your company. All right, that was a lot. Now, let's get to work. Let's actually start to use that. So this is how you're going to get started. When you get back to your office or when you get back to your computer, you're going to build your AI home base. You're going to make a directory, and you're going to get all of your context in there. Feed it context. Any tasks that you do on a repeated basis, you're going to say, hey, let's turn this into a skill. And eventually, you're going to have this library of these skills that basically tells the agent how to do your job, which is awesome and going to save you a lot of time. And then you're going to iterate on prompts. As you're using your AI home base, you're going to improve things, you're going to save prompts, you're going to use the prompts you already have to write new prompts, and eventually you're going to have this growing kind of garden where you're tending your garden, and it's going to get more and more powerful as you use it. Prompt practices framework. You're going to have the context dump first, because context is king. That's what the AI home base provides. That's like going to be the most powerful thing for improving your AI usage in your practice. Always remember to iterate. Don't try to one-shot it. Don't think you're going to get the right answer in just the first prompt. You're really going to want to do some back and forth with the agent to get something valuable. Make sure you go into it with a skeptic's review, both because we don't actually know how AI works and because iterating makes things better as you go. Don't forget to use it as a translator. If you have different audiences that you're asking or that you're communicating with, you can use the AI agent to help you with that communication. And lastly, the evolution loop. This is where you save important information, maybe into a note-taking system. You save the best prompts. You make recurring tasks into skills. You're just doing this evolution so that your AI home base gets more and more powerful as you're using it. Don't forget that you are the expert and AI is the multiplier. So if AI is now the baseline expectationers, the baseline expectation, you need to know that like the practitioners who do the best with this are not going to be the AI experts, but they're going to be the FinOps experts who know how to utilize AI. So your domain expertise is the one thing that AI cannot replace, at least yet. So use the AI to direct your work and leverage your work, and AI will definitely accelerate your execution. And that's the presentation. I think we have some time for some Q&A. Thank you.
Big thank you there, Dan. That was a brilliant and insightful practical talk for everyone to finish the day on. So we've got the fun mic toy here to throw around. Who would like to ask questions first? And Dan, you can select the people.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to throw this.
Yeah.
Yeah, ready?
Hot potato.
Well done.
The agents you're creating, is it for you only as a FinOps team, or is it a customer-based system? Is there a marketplace? How are you controlling this?
The thing that I set up is just for me. It's just kind of like how I choose to work in my day-to-day thing. I think that when you build an AI home base, it could certainly be collaborative with certain skills and certain things that you kind of commit to a repo and everybody can kind of pull down and do. But at least my setup right now, I'm also a solo practitioner, so I don't necessarily think about that. But yeah.
No.
Ooh.
Right, we'll stop throwing before someone gets injured. Okay, who next?
We have some over here.
Over there? Yeah, sorry, I'm getting blinded. We'll go here and manage it more carefully.
Hey, Dan, how's it going? Whoop. I got to move away from this. You showed a slide with a bunch of different tools that you're using. I was wondering if you could actually run a little list of what specific tools you use. I know you're trying to be neutral or Switzerland about it, but can you actually just...
Yeah, I mean, for mine...
What device do you use, actually?
It's Claude
Mac
Code.
Or
Yeah,
Linux
Mac.
Or?
Mac, I use Claude Code. I'm in a terminal. I like Ghosty. Ghosty has been a fun terminal application. And Obsidian for note-taking. Those are kind of like my holy trinity.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on Warp?
I haven't used it.
All right.
Well, actually, I remember when that launched, and I tried it, and then that was a long time ago, so I haven't touched it since.
And what
That's
AI?
like the AI terminal, right?
Are you using what? Yeah, it is an AI terminal.
Okay, yeah, no, I
What are you
haven't
using,
tried
Claude,
it recently.
or you're using something else?
Ghosty is the terminal, and then Claude Code in Ghosty is usually.
All right, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Who's next? Any hands? Over there. Right, get my steps in. Ready? Catch.
Hey, Dan.
Hello.
Question for you about context. Have you found that it is at all valuable to limit the amount of context you'll give agents?
So in the AI home base, I'm not necessarily providing all of the context in every prompt. So when you have something like an OpenClaw, the thing that made OpenClaw so expensive was that it was feeding so much context into every prompt that it was sending in. This is getting a little bit more technical. So what I tend to do is you frame the prompts rather like when you need the AI agent to have certain information. So I can say, hey, look in this folder for this specific thing, and then use that to do this. So I find that it's much easier to kind of direct it in your AI home base where you know the information is, or even saying like find this piece and use it, so it's not kind of like loading up on that context and consuming a million tokens.
Gotcha. So you'll keep the parent directory is always accessible and then point it to specific subfolders or subdirectories.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's kind of like pulling need to know information when it needs it and kind of like knows where to look to do certain things. And even skills, when you're doing skills, like if you have a skill for like checking your calendar and looking at your notes, that skill can tell it exactly where to look. And so all you're feeding is the context in that skill and then the work that it takes to scan and get that information.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Yep. Oh. There you go.
Hello, Dan.
Hello.
You mentioned early in the pres that memory was a really important part, and I was wondering, what is your, I find that to be basically the most important part, and so I'm wondering, are you still manually managing markdown files, or what's your process for making sure that you don't blow through 3 or 4 different big tasks and forget to update along the way in your home base?
Yeah, so 2 things for this. One that's kind of in the scope of the presentation and one that's a little bit more complex. I have recurring tasks that will like look at conversations and kind of like save memories and index it. So that's something that you can just ask it to do, be like have a recurring thing at the end of the day, like take a look at what we talked about and save important things. The other thing that is a little bit more advanced that I've kind of toyed around with is having some sort of long-term memory in like a vector database that you have locally. So you can have it index your notes and memories into a vector database and then have a retrieval system doing it. But that's beyond the scope. You don't need to do any of that to have this system. But yeah, memory is super important. And kind of as you get more advanced in your practice, you might find the need to have something a little bit more complex. And then you can kind of go back and forth with the agent about what your options are.
Brilliant. OK. There you go.
Hi, Dan. See how I want to ask this. You can just give one word. Hermes or OpenClaw?
I don't know Hermes,
Okay.
but I wouldn't choose OpenClaw. I played around with OpenClaw a little bit, and then it made me too scared. I refused to run it on my own computer, and so I installed it on like a remote VM. But still, it was just like, so kind of this system was sort of inspired by me being like, OK, there were some pieces of OpenClaw that I liked, but I kind of wanted to just custom build it from the ground up, just giving it the permissions and the abilities that I wanted it to have. And that's sort of where this whole concept came from. So, yeah.
Any more over there? Right. I'm going to throw you out. Ready?
Dan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What's your thoughts? Because I do, at my job, they give me permission to use Claude Code. I got local agents on my workstation. Mm-hmm. And so using Claude Code, I got Agent OS to do the planning, Bedrock, and then storing a bunch of files on my workstation because it's just a lot quicker than just waiting for security. Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts? Because I'm always trying to prompt engineer and trying to save money, essentially. And using, because I use ChatGPT to create prompts in order to then create skills within Claude Code. Mm-hmm. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, is that a good way to do it? I don't know, how do you do in refining your prompts?
Yeah, so you mentioned having multiple agents. Do you have to like log into a different folder for each agent to kind of like launch it and run it and do it? Yep. Yeah, or I can't see.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is a great way to do it. I think one kind of layer up you might want to consider is having an agent that can then invoke those agents, so it's all kind of in one place. So the AI home base concept would kind of be a folder where all of those directories live, and then instructions for like how and when to use them. And I think leveraging AI to make better prompts is super powerful. I think I have a few like saved prompts that are kind of like help me improve this prompt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's just that's part of the iteration piece, right? You just want to iterate until you're able to have something that works really well, and then make sure you have a place to save that and invoke it again, so that as you're using it, you're tending to it like a garden, and it's getting more powerful as you use it.
Cool. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you. Back there.
Back here. You look nervous. We'll pass it down.
I'm Chandler. Hey Dan, hi. Very nice talk. I feel like it's amazing for new users and also amazing just as a framework for people who've been using it for a while. So very helpful.
Thank you.
How do you, since you've I feel like you know a whole lot about this, how do you recover from hallucinations, and how do you prevent it from happening? Because that's like something that I kind of like struggle with at times, and I always have to just like restart.
Yeah, I've found that the more I've gotten better at providing it the right context, the less hallucinations I get. That doesn't mean that they're not there, but like with good like prompting practices, you just reduce the number of hallucinations. And I think one of the things that you can add to prompts if you're still getting hallucinations is, what assumptions are you making? List them out to me. And when you can see that, you can be like, oh, you're making this, and that's totally wrong, and that's why you got this wrong answer. And so the more information and context that you can give it, the more clear you can be with kind of what the outcome is, and then knowing the assumptions, those sorts of things will like greatly help reduce that.
Awesome. I love that idea, and also love the idea about like saving the prompts that actually work really well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Would you like to pass it to the gentleman behind you? Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot. Question about whether it's thinking about your home base or kind of you as a solo practitioner. Have you taken input from your cloud spend and kind of either ingested that into a folder in your home base to then query and ask questions? And if so, help me understand more about why the thought to maybe deploy that out to the business and kind of leveraging what you've built, because you had made comments earlier about, I kind of just built this for my own use. So tell me about why maybe that stopped or that idea didn't maybe take off, or maybe it did.
Yeah, so this is a really great question when it comes to actually getting access to your cloud billing data in something like your an AI home base or your agent. There's kind of two options right now. The first is you can connect it directly to your BigQuery data and then use SQL to kind of get it. The other option is to use a vendor. And a lot of vendors have MCP servers. And that is a superpower in terms of like being able to do this. I've heard some great stories about people building systems that utilize a vendor's MCP server to kind of like pull in the billing data and stuff that just really isn't possible if you're just trying to write your own SQL. I have worked in the space for a very long time. I was at Datadog and FullStory and now Squarespace. We've never used a third-party vendor. And at Squarespace, we don't have like the MCP billing server, so I'm still doing a lot of my work with SQL and the actual like BigQuery data and building systems around that, which is definitely not as powerful, but is doable. You have to be more clear about kind of what you are asking of it and how to execute certain things if you're going to go that route. But I think one of the shortcuts and the easy ways is just go with a vendor.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
One over here, and then I think one down the front, and then we'll see what time we've got left.
In your journey, did you use like a model router or like different models itself, right, to see which is good, which is bad, like all different things? Did you try?
Yeah, I mean, for this sort of stuff that I'm describing here, I think Sonnet is great. I almost never need to use something like Opus. I mean, I think there's the new automated system where like planning is done in Opus and then the execution is done in Sonnet and it like automatically switches. I think that's great for coding workflows. For my FinOps work and everything, I have not needed the latest and greatest at all. And Sonnet 4.6 is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. We've got one down the front, I think, and then one at the back. And then we might be out of time, everybody, but let's see. Do you still have a question? No? Yeah?
So basically, it was the question regarding hallucinations. So what I've found that's been very helpful is that you tell the LLM that giving the wrong answer is worse than giving no answer at all. So if you give that prompt, it actually really sticks to the data set that you provided, right?
Yeah.
So that's been very helpful, and I've never, I've been more trustful of its responses.
Yeah. It's hard to get the I don't know.
I do love the talk. You're doing exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I feel very smart because,
Good.
you're out there. But if there is one suggestion, take a look at Beads and Dolt as your memory manager.
What is it?
Beads, basically, it takes your prompts in more contextual and just kind of sends smaller pieces so that you're also managing your spend. Your prompts, sometimes when I do prompts, I've had 256 lines in my prompt because there's a lot of billing data that you bring in, things like that.
The context, yeah.
Doing it this way kind of, limits some of that sizing.
Awesome, thank you.
Brilliant. One at the back. A catch?
So one of the interesting things about Cloud Code is you fire it up in a directory, right? And it knows about the thing, and maybe you have some context file over here and you want to like pull it in, and it's kind of an awkward situation. So it seems like this is kind of solving that in some cases. So when you start up a new session, do you always go to your home base, start it up there, and even if you're working on a code directory inside, start it up at that top, and then say, I want to work on this code directory? Or will you go in like deeper, start something up, and is all of your code inside that code directory, or do you have like something outside?
Yeah, so the way that I have it set up, and I haven't experimented that much to be able to provide a thorough necessary answer to this, I have some repos that are in there. They are not the entire company's code base. That I think is too big. And if I'm working on the actual company's code base, I'm launching the Claude code session in that directory. But for smaller repos that I kind of have to do different work for my job, those can all just live in the AI home base. And then the Claude.mg gives instructions about like what they are, how to access them. And then I'm always launching the Claude session from the AI home base, which has instructions about like what the directories inside that contain repos are.
Okay, and there's some like gold nuggets in here. If you're in some other like your company repo or whatever, you just reference out like, hey, go check over this file over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Pull that context in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Great. We've got time for one more question. If there's any more questions left, Dan has been a superstar with the volume here.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Great presentation.
Thank you.
What are the use cases you're thinking to implement for the future?
Like, how is this going to grow?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if there's any features, like big ones, that are missing from this that I need to do my daily work. I mean, so typically the way that this has evolved and grown has not been from me kind of sitting down one day and being like, this is the vision of what I want it to be at. It kind of starts small, where I have a single use case, and then I save it, and then I want to do something extra, and then I add that to it, and it's like, oh, this would be great if like my notes were in here, or this would be, so it's kind of like evolved and grown over time. So I imagine there will be additional features and future things. I just don't know what that is until I come up with a use case. And then I'll add it in there, and then that'll be part of the story.
Cool. Organic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we just have one more big round of applause for Dan?
Thank you all.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.